it was a bit choppy in patches. It wasn't one of the easiest games that I've ever seen them play. It didn't feel as assured and kind of confident and, I don't know, a little bit like fluid, I think, as the last Spain game. But I think obviously there were different conditions. You had the pitch.
Sorry.
Wasn't great, go on.
Pitch was shy.
What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, pitch was shy for both teams, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's. I think it does make a difference when you go from like being able to like play fluid football, being able to like your ticky-tacky passes, the quick pace. It does get caught up. The ball bobbles differently. It does break up the play a little bit more.
And I think when you're
for both, but it does.
But when you're a team like England who are doing a lot of running versus maybe Iceland are doing less running, particularly in that first half, the second half when Iceland then decide to start pushing forward, England's legs are suddenly like lead. So yeah, but like I say, it was the same for both teams. But I it's not an excuse. It was just a factor.
Yes, it was a bit claggy.
It was indeed.
But let's talk about the first half because I feel like that was actually quite a dominant performance. There were some really good opportunities for England to kind of extend their 1-0 league, but didn't kind of take it. But like that Russo goal, can we just talk about that for a brief second?
That was a beautiful passage of play. Lauren Hemp doing the dog's work of getting the ball up the pitch, shirking off at people trying to tackle her and laying a lovely pass for Russo. The turn then from Russo, she received it kind of with her back to goal and then turned, I think, kind of clockwise around with the ball. And arguably, like, from a ridiculous angle, put it in the bottom corner. Because when I watched it back, I thought, I didn't realise she must have taken another touch to get that more central. But no, she buried it in the bottom corner and it was... that nice kind of from back to front, quick football. None of this kind of passing it around the box, trying to break up the defenders. And that's, I guess, the danger for Iceland. When you're sitting back a bit and then you counter, you can get caught out with quick play like that.
I definitely think that's in the game plan because we saw exactly the same, almost like a template situation in the Spain game previously. I think it was Kira Walsh that started the play and then it was Hemp and then it was a tiki-taki with Lucy Bronze and then I think it was Hemp who struck the post. And you kind of see that's what England are trying to do is kind of invite play up into their half and then counter very, very quickly these long balls in midfield that kind of generate this kind of additional momentum and kind of hit them so quickly on that counter. But I was super impressed in the first half. I thought it was punchy. And then you've got this kind of the second half. Iceland kind of, I would say, probably looked like the more dominant side, but still some really good chances from England. You had that the Beth Mead header. The great save from the keeper, like point blank, but a save from it's a cross coming in, wasn't it? But yeah, I did think Iceland obviously came through, and also we've got to give a bit of a shout out to Hannah Hampton. But yeah, it kind of felt like they dropped off a little bit.
Yeah, I think probably part of their game plan for Iceland, and I think a lot of people are just saying England switched off without kind of crediting the fact that Iceland
switch off at all.
They just looked a little bit tired and on the back foot, and I do think part of that was Iceland's tactics to kind of maybe sit and absorb a little bit in that first half. They definitely came out on the front foot in the second. They were pressing England higher up the pitch, forcing them into kind of, and England were a little bit sloppy then in possession. And I think as well, like as the game ticked on and it was 1-0, the momentum, the crowd, that just starts to swing Iceland's way because they know
they're so loud.
Yeah, we're up in the box, we're peppering their goal, we're causing problems, we're getting corners, plenty of corners. And that kind of confidence then starts to grow for Iceland in the second half. I think Iceland got 6 corners. And I imagine most of them were in the second half. So, it starts to kind of ratchet up the tension a little bit.
Definitely.
And I was just saying to you before we started recording, and we'll get to Ireland later on, but this win, I feel like, maybe last season or in previous iterations of the Nations League, a game like that would have resulted in a draw. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, we were touching on the small margins that get you over the line in games like this. It's an element of resilience. It's an element of luck at times, and these are important moments for England to ride out games like this. Mm-hmm. I don't think England underestimated Iceland. We certainly didn't underestimate Iceland. I think some maybe did, maybe fans. I saw some media saying that Iceland and Ukraine were kind of similar level. Absolutely not. I think
Dóttirs are pretty strong. They're a force to be reckoned with.
But also they know their game plan. They're very, very good at it. And they can do it and sustain it for 90 plus minutes. And I think that's where maybe a lot of teams fall down when maybe they rely more on their defence and being compact, is that they don't have the fitness essentially to continue doing that for 90 plus minutes against a team like England or a team like Spain. And I think Iceland are so diligent and disciplined in the game plan and fit enough to, carry it out for that long. And they've got some quality in that team.
Well, I think that was the thing that I noticed most is like your back's kind of against the wall, you're 1-0 down, you've got minutes left in the game, sort of like 10, 15 minutes. And it felt like instead of them just sort of being quite tired because they'd obviously been running on this pitch, it's a bit claggy, it's a bit heavy, they're kind of they've not been able to capitalise on some of the chances that they've had earlier. Those last 10 or 15 minutes, Iceland took it up to another level, to a next gear, and really put England under pressure. I mean, you've got 79th minute, you've got Dóttirs on that left side who kind of cuts in, cuts back, hits the post, it comes out. Hannah Hampton, absolutely incredible save, just about manages to get her foot to it. And then you've got in the 81st minute, it kind of falls to Dóttir from the corner. Again, Hannah Hampton coming out to smother it. But it kind of feels like that's the point in the game where you should be most tired. But it felt like the crowd getting behind them, it felt like they were really gunning for this draw. And to be honest, I think that second half especially, they kind of deserved it.
Yeah, I think a draw was probably a fair result.
Yeah, I wouldn't have walked away from that thinking that was an injustice if it was a draw.
I really liked what Anita Asante said in the BBC on the BBC about Hannah Hampton. She said that Hampton's ability gives the team confidence in big World Cup qualifiers. That's what goalkeepers are there for. Bail out the defence when they get exploited. Hampton makes pivotal and vital saves in vital moments. She's a goalkeeper that loves a challenge and loves being there. She's alert, makes massive saves. The mentality to focus on her job and execute actions in vital moment gives the rest of the team the confidence that they can manage the momentum swings. And that I really like that, you know, when you know a game, and it happens in games, it doesn't matter if you're not playing a team who's above you in the rankings or who you should, will expect a difficult game from, even if it is a team further down the rankings. There are going to be moments in games where the momentum shifts, and it's how you manage that. And I think, we saw a couple of periods in previous years where maybe those momentum shifts, England maybe wilt a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think I just really like that Hampton gives them the confidence to say, okay, the momentum's shifting, but we know we've basically got a brick wall back there that we're going to be able to manage it. And I just really like that. I
think there's, that was perfectly put by Anita Asante. It's really hard to add to comments that are so eloquently stated. But I've got to agree. And I think it's the development of Hannah Hampton that I think has been super crucial over the past couple of years, because we've seen her step into, international football sort of a fair few years ago, but kind of not getting her chance. Mary Earps was number one. There was a little bit of a controversial, bit of drama, bit of hoo-ha behind the scenes. Hannah Hampton then steps in for the Euros last year, does an incredible job, is an amazing part of why we succeeded essentially in those big, like you said, pivotal moments. But even with Chelsea, again, we kind of see her week in, week out, kind of dominating and being...
Arguably, I was going to say arguably, and it's been said in kind of the media that, this maybe hasn't been her best year at Chelsea, but I mean, her bar is so high that even when she's not at her absolute best, she's still world class.
It's been no one's best year at Chelsea.
No, that's fair. But I think the point is, you can go through maybe rocky patches here and there. That sometimes I find with players, like when you pull on your country's shirt, there's just like another level that they find.
It's like the Power Rangers.
She's obviously still a superb goalkeeper at Chelsea. Don't get me wrong. Don't come for me. I'm just saying that in some of the media afterwards, and even some of the questions asked to Serena Wiegman, it was, look, she's having a difficult year. Just generally, the team, I guess, are having a more difficult year
for sure.
Domestically, and how valuable she is when she comes into the squad and pulls on performances like that. Rachel Brown-Finnis said it as well. She was like, if anyone thought that Hannah Hampton just had a good Euros and that was kind of a flash in the pan, this is a reminder that she is an absolute world-class goalkeeper.
She's been building this for a very long time. I think there's a resilience and, like I said, a maturity in her that I'm really starting to love.
And very humble.
She is very humble.
Asked about a post-match, she was like, it's my job. I can't go down the other end and score goals, but I can stop them going in this end. Well, Alessia does her job one end of the pitch, and I do mine. I was like,
she's very classic goalkeeper-esque. Like when she was making these amazing saves against Iceland, it was almost like there was like a small. I did see like a corner of her mouth,
a quiver,
like those. Like when the players came over to her, like slapped her hands and stuff, and there was just like okay, right, back game mode, straight back in.
Well, yeah, I guess you can't dwell in the moment too long. You can't be like, yay, I saved this.
Oh, it's a draw.
I lost my concentration. Yeah, no.
So I'm going to be fortunate enough actually to see Hannah Hampton in real life this evening. Rach, you're not going, but I am with your wife.
So just clarify, I was invited.
You were invited,
but I'm in hospital tomorrow and I can't go. So.
And me and Soph will be attending. It's a Sky Sports event.
You and Soph will both be attending the event separately, but you just both will happen to be there. You're not going together.
Yeah, we're not going together, but we will see each other and probably spend the evening together.
Why are you saying it like that? There's going to be other people there as well. Why? What is wrong with you? You have a girlfriend. Why do you get so weird about my wife? Anyway, you're going to see Hannah Hampton too. She better be careful.
She is speaking with Kelly Cates, a little fireside chat, which I'm really looking forward to. Most likely to kind of tell us a little bit about all the amazing saves that she's been making over the past week or so. But like you said, I think she's probably going to be so friggin' humble about the whole thing. I'm hoping there's a Q&A and I can pop my little hand up and
watch
say
out,
something.
Hannah. If she asks you a question, she's going to derive a different meaning from it.
Thank you, Rach.
Should England qualify top of the group? There are moments that you're going to look back on through these qualifiers and say, and I just keep coming back to that Hannah Hampton save against Spain. Now, I know you touched on, obviously she made a lot of saves against Iceland as well, but the save, like kind of point blank last minute against Spain, they're the moments that kind of where games turn on their heads or don't, if you like. Yep. And I just think, I know we talk a lot about the goal scorers and the wins, but there are other moments in games that have as much of an impact. And I just, they're the kind of, if England qualify directly, they're as big as the goals that were scored. And speaking of goal scorers, Leslie Russo, 30th goal.
Gosh.
30th goal.
What a moment.
I think she's now in the top 10 of goal scorers for England, I think.
Christ.
So that was a nice little 500th game. 30th goal.
Also, our queen, Leah Williamson, returned and started alongside Esme Morgan, which was lovely to see. Welcome back, Leah. And like you said, Rach, let's touch on this 500th moment because it's been... I don't think you can appreciate kind of the scale and the gravity of what a game like this means, what a milestone means for the Lionesses, the history behind this fixture. And they did loads of like amazing activations, kind of bringing in like, some of the kind of first Lionesses like back into the picture and doing these amazing commemorative shirts. Then you've got the Iceland players also kind of leaning into it, which is really lovely to see. Like a lovely show of solidarity.
I love that. Like we will applaud you at this, but we're going to try and spoil your party.
We will destroy you.
We are going to try and make it as a most annoying 500th game.
It would have been, and it would have been such a horrible thing to have had your 500th game as a loss. So the Iceland players were kind of applauding the Lionesses onto the pitch before the kickoff to mark the game, and then ahead of the game, the players were asked, if you could have 500 of anything, what would it be? Alessia Russo said handbags, which is unusual because I don't see Alessia Russo as a handbag girly. If I'm honest,
I don't often see her with one. So I mean, 500. How are you rotating them?
And then we had Alex Greenwood saying cars.
I mean, how are you driving 500? Where are you putting them? You'd need like your own car park.
These are very superficial ones, I will say, Lionesses. Neve Charles, even worse. Bars of gold.
Smart girl.
What, the investments?
Absolutely.
The value of gold is going up. Lauren Hemp.
Essentially, it's money, innit?
Yeah, no, fair enough. And, women's football doesn't,
and then she can buy 500 cars and 500 handbags.
It's very unlikely to be able to retire on the money. Lauren Hemp, I thought would have said Lego. Instead, brought it down a level. Custard creams.
Love that. You're not building a lot with 500 pieces of Lego. 500 custard creams will keep you going.
I don't think 500 custard creams would keep a lioness going, actually. It could be the end of your career,
depends
to be honest.
How you spread them out or how frequently you receive them.
Leah Williams said pounds from Leah Williamson.
It's kind of boring.
Yeah, I was going to...
I thought you would have said like plain ham sandwiches or something like that. She loves a plain ham sandwich.
Well, how do you know that?
She's spoken about it.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Hannah Hampton said chocolate milks.
Oh,
a mixed bag in here. A really mixed bag.
I love a chocolate milk. That's
what would you have?
It's a good question. Maybe like...
Go on.
Like either like 500 wishes. Which you could like...
fucking drop me
Or
out.
like dogs.
500 dogs?
Yeah.
Where the fuck are you going to put 500 dogs?
What
You're struggling with 2 cats.
500 with anything. 500. What would you want? Can we maybe get our listeners into this because we could be here a while thinking about it. See, it's not that easy a question.
No, it's not that easy a question.
Because you're like, if it's going to be like big things, where are you putting it? It could end up being more of a headache than anything.
Trainers for me.
£500 will only get you like a train up to Manchester.
Yeah, I don't know why Leah said that.
Not going to get you anywhere.
No, trainers. It would be trainers for me.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I'd take trainers.
Yeah, okay.
Or 500 like vouchers for like meals.
You just got to be smart with it. This is what I mean. You need like that's why Neves is clever.
Yeah, no fair.
500 like diamonds.
You can
because that's not very ethically produced. Something like that. 500
lab grown diamonds. That's what we've settled on.
No, I don't know if lab grown diamonds are as expensive as. Basically, you want something that you can sell that's worth more than
houses.
The gold. I can't manage 500 houses. I need to hire a whole team then, and then you're wasting more money.
Yeah,
listen, we're down a road.
Fucking hell,
we're down a
Christ,
road here.
20 minutes
500 episodes so that we can discuss the 500 things.
Yeah, 500 more minutes on this podcast. Right, in terms of the remaining fixtures that England have, we've got Spain in Mallorca on the 5th of June and Ukraine at Everton's Hill Dickinson Stadium on the 9th of June. If they win both, they will secure automatic qualification for the World Cup in Brazil next summer.
If they like draw against Spain or lose against Spain, it puts even more pressure on that Ukraine game. So interesting.
Don't.
Because Spain now have the same goal difference as England. They're both on +9.
But it also depends on how Spain
get on against Iceland.
Yeah.
Because the Spain game is second last as opposed to last.
But I think it's also the importance of trying to get this thing wrapped up now, so you don't have those additional games. You want to be as fresh as possible, and the least minutes you have to play between now and Brazil, the better.
Do you know what though? Maybe it's good that the Spain game is first, because I think we've seen over the last few windows. I mean, I think this window is going to be 2 weeks as opposed to 3 weeks. But you see, England have come out first game being probably a bit better than in the second game, and I think they spent that chunk of that first kind of week and a half focusing on Spain, and then they had about a 3-day turnaround to prep for, or 4-day turnaround to prep for Iceland. So maybe it's good that Spain's coming first rather than second.
I think it's also the mentality of it. Like you want to get your biggest battles out of the way first. You do not want to get into a situation where Spain would have won their game, England win their game, and then it's like the finale of I think the pressure is too high. So but like saying this, it does feel like it has been a very long time since we've kind of talked about any other football apart from international football. Like this 3-week window has been great, I think, in some ways, but in other ways, I feel like it's the end of the season. You just want things to be wrapped up. You want to get things out of the way. Man City are kind of like, for fuck's sake, can we just see out what is essentially going to be their title?
Yeah.
But yeah, do you not think it's felt quite wide?
It has, and I think it's because, I mean, the window is designed to play 3 fixtures, but you don't have to play 3 fixtures if you don't want to, obviously, which England and a lot of European teams haven't done. Serena Wiegman said essentially that what she's enjoyed about it is that it gives them more time to kind of talk tactics and do, look at stuff like that, which maybe you're so wrapped up in just game focus in normal windows that it doesn't allow you to do that much kind of tactical stuff, which is kind of interesting. But she also said, which I thought was interesting, given this stage of the season, players are in different places essentially with their clubs. So like maybe you're still in the Champions League, or maybe you're still in the latter stages of the Cup. You think it has been bloody ages since the WSL, because we had FA Cup right before the window. So that's added like an extra week.
I remember domestic football.
Exactly. But, so she said that basically players will then come in different stages, if you like, of some might be tired, some might be a bit fresher. And that extra week then gives them a bit more time to get them all up to the kind of same level, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, it feels like a long time. I think that's the end of the 3-week breaks for this kind of period until, next year or whatever it might be. So I think it's 2 weeks from now on.
Oh no, fair.
But it has felt long.
It has felt long. It has felt really bloody long. And I miss the WSL. And I'm looking forward to sitting back on the sofa this weekend and catching up with it all. But before we talk about anything WSL related, we've obviously got to throw to your team.
Yeah.
Ireland. Getting their second win over Poland in the space of a week. Denise O'Sullivan almost scored the most amazing, incredible solo effort.
That would have been, I think it was Tony from RTE who's talking to her afterwards, and he was like, we witnessed you score, we witnessed the best goal you never scored, because she ultimately didn't put it in the back of the net. But like the most unbelievable solo effort of like 2 flicks and then over players, and then hitting it off the crossbar. She got player of the match, unbelievable. Marissa Shiva, again, unbelievable. Emily Murphy as well.
That's the kind of almost effort though that you think no one's ever gonna, you won't remember it almost, because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Yeah, it's just like no one remembers an effort that didn't go in.
Yeah. But it was really important game. Obviously, having beaten Poland away, it was always going to be tough against the same team again. And as cliche as it sounds, the team that's just gotten beaten will always have more lessons to learn, and they'll be bruised and they'll want to come out and spoil the party at the Aviva Stadium in front of 18,000 fans as well, which was nice. So to get that win, it was a bit more of a cagey affair. It wasn't like last time out where Ireland kind of were on the front foot. Poland definitely came out in the first half. But I thought Ireland managed it really well. And I think, again, what I said about the England was that, like, in previous windows, I feel like they would have let that slip, that lead slip. they'd kind of wilt under the pressure a little bit if Poland were kind of knocking on the door towards the end, and they didn't. The fact that they were able to hold out, ensure that they got the 3 points is massive, good for the mentality. And it's huge. I think Carla was saying they're the first team from pot 4 in League A, so essentially like the lowest ranked team into a group that have won 2 games. So that kind of that group is, I'm not going to say wide open. I mean, technically it is wide open, but you've got like the Netherlands beat France. So Netherlands are on 8, France are on 7, Ireland are on 6, and Poland are on 1. So I don't think we ever expected Ireland to be that close to either the Netherlands or France, and the only gutting thing facing the Netherlands in Cork in June is that both Denise O'Sullivan and Emily Murphy will be missing due to yellow card accumulation.
Injustice.
No, but like, of all players, we missed Denise O'Sullivan against the Netherlands the last time, and there was just that, it felt like a Denise O'Sullivan shaped hole in the midfield where the Netherlands were getting a lot of joy. So she was really missed. And, for those 2 players, Emily Murphy has gotten player of the match in the first 3 games of these qualifiers. Denise O'Sullivan got it in the 4th. So you're really missing some crucial players in that Netherlands game.
Well, I was going to say, before the pod started, you're obviously singing the praises of Emily Murphy. You think like she's the biggest, best thing that's ever happened to Ireland. Obviously, she's currently at Newcastle. But we've got a really cool question in from Lank Chops on Instagram. Could a WSL move be on the cards for Murphy?
I don't see why not. I mean, equally though, she's getting game time at Newcastle, which has been the kind of a big turnaround in her end product, because she's always been quick. She's always been great at triggering the press, at kind of putting pressure on defences, getting up the pitch with the ball. But kind of, I think I said in the previous pod, it was the end product that was kind of lacking a little bit. And now that game time at Newcastle has really helped that. What I wouldn't want to happen is to go to a team in the WSL and her start getting less minutes.
Yep.
So sometimes I think, when players have a bit of form, they end up getting snapped up. There's been talk about Lucia Kendall. Will she get snapped up and go to, and sometimes you're like, the value of being
regularly
I don't mean this in a the way it's going to sound, but like a bigger fish in a smaller pond almost. Do you know that kind of way where you're more important in a team? You learn so much from that. So, I mean, she's good enough too, but if she does, I'd really hope that she's getting the minutes then she deserves. It's great. It's just really good. Like, a lot of excitement around the Ireland squad. I said it last week, that kind of balance they've managed to strike between Ward ball and Ireland ball, and they've kind of found that balance. And again, a bit like some of the players we were talking about for England, like they pull on an Ireland shirt, and I think it was Aaron Clark from LOIW. He does a lot of the Ireland games, and he was speaking to Kira Carusa afterwards, and she had an unbelievable game. She missed the first game through illness, and he was like, look, I know sometimes you're not getting a lot of minutes at club or whatever over in NWSL, but like, what is it about this, why is it your game is so like unbelievable? When she was like, you pull on this shirt and you get in amongst this team, like everyone wants to do absolutely everything for the badge and for each other. And you get that sense anytime you talk to someone who plays for Ireland, that it's that collectiveness that they've kind of developed around the squad. They've had it before. I think, dipped a little bit after not qualifying for the Euros, took a little while to kind of get their heads around that and get over it. But there is a unity in that squad where people will literally put their bodies on the line for the team. So, it's just, it's exciting. It's someone said, we were so disappointed after the Euros, you kind of felt like what was next. And now it feels like something's building again, and there's excitement building again. And that's really nice to have.
Sounds like you like them.
Not bad.
Yeah. Well, thoughts for Ireland and the Lionesses as they face these games in June. We'll wait and see like what the outcome of that and where they land in that table is.
Carla Ward said that I think it was either that the World Cup would be poorer without Ireland or something like richer with it. That kind of, it was like the World Cup deserves to have Ireland in it. That kind of way.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I love that.
100%.
Could you imagine Carla Ward at a World Cup? She would be so excited. Oh my God.
Coming up after this, journalist Kit Holden joins us to discuss a historic appointment in Germany. Now, we wanted to tackle something a little bit different this week. Last week, unless you're living under a rock, you will have seen that Marie-Louise Eta made history by becoming the first woman to manage a men's team in one of Europe's top 5 leagues. She will be Bundesliga side Union Berlin's head coach until the end of the 25-26 season.
Yes, it's been everywhere.
This was huge news, and it was really nice to kind of have this like beautiful, positive moment that everyone was talking about as this, this woman who's achieved this historic moment by becoming the first coach in a men's top flight. We still haven't seen this in the UK. So for this to be happening in Germany, it kind of felt like we wanted to explore a little bit more about what was going on, what the reaction was like. Getting a view from someone who really understood, how this has landed.
Yeah, and also we've been talking about it in the frame of, the Premier League and the discussions there and how it will be received here. And it's interesting to kind of find out the difference of how it's received in Germany and just how, not necessarily more progressive, but like how fans receive it and media receive it over there versus here. So definitely want to delve into that.
How was this appointment initially received in Germany? It's such a massive moment, not just in Germany, but across the world. I mean, we were talking about it quite a bit in the UK too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, strangely, the initial reaction was probably a bit muted, but that was mainly because they announced it at midnight on Saturday night, so I think a lot of people were already in bed. But once everybody woke up, it was obviously a huge story, as you say, not just here, but across the world. And I think we saw that at Union last week. I mean, I turned up at training on Tuesday morning, and the groundsman's eyes were out on stalks because he said he'd never seen so many journalists there, and it was the same a couple of days later at the press conference and at the game on Saturday. So yeah, it was a huge story. I mean, I think, obviously for obvious reasons, I mean, Germany, there are other female coaches working, there's Sabrina Wittmann and Ingolstadt, but obviously this is a groundbreaking moment in that it's a Bundesliga club, it's a top flight club, and obviously that has a lot of significance. But I think in Berlin itself and around Union, it was perhaps a little bit less surprising because Louise Eta has been around for a few years. She's a very, very well-respected figure at the club, and really both from the media perspective and the fan perspective, there was a general consensus that it was an obvious choice. She was the right person to jump in at this point, and a safe pair of hands to get Union over the line in the relegation fight.
She has broken records before. November 2023, she became the Bundesliga's first female assistant coach, also at Union Berlin, and also deputised for Bielitsa, who was coach at the time while he was serving a 3-match suspension. She was also managing the Union Berlin's under-19s team as well. So, maybe no stranger to kind of breaking through those glass ceilings. And as you touched on, has obviously developed quite the reputation that, a lot of respect in the game. Like, what kind of, she's highly thought of, you said there. What do you think her kind of strengths are as a coach?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think she's a good people person. She's a good man manager in that sense. In that she's a kind of old-fashioned term. I think she talked a little bit in the press conference last week about she was asked, is it different to coach men or to coach women and to coach youth players? And she said, not really. It's about individuals and building those relationships with the person in front of you and adapting to different characters within a team. And I think you can see that on the training pitch. She's very involved with the players, very vocal. She's building those relationships individually and with the group. Tactically, I think her instincts are a little bit more attacking. With the under-19, she's played some really, really good football this year, but with the men's, I think she's going to have to rein that in because, for the last 5-6 years, they've been a classical lower half of the table Bundesliga team who play, it's safety first and it's counter-attacking, it's defensive stability, and that's what she's going to have to be doing in the next few weeks, and I think she's fine with that too. But I think that kind of those personal skills and a straight talker as well. I mean, Rani Khedira, the vice captain, was talking yesterday about how she's come in and she's not minced her words, and she said what's going wrong. She said what's going right as far as she's concerned, and the players have reacted positively to that. So,
given her time at the club and the fans know her and you guys know her, do you think it was the reaction to her appointment more widely? Was that expected, or did it come as a bit of a surprise, given, I imagine, for those in and around the club, as you said, it felt like a natural appointment, and I guess maybe they thought it would just carry on, but now you've had all this kind of media scrutiny around the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously people knew that it would be a big story. I mean, it is a big story. It's a big moment in German football and European football at large. But I think there is a bit of a discord between how much it makes sense from an Union perspective. I mean, she's done the job before, as you said, under Bielitsa. She stepped in for a few games. She's been in that role before. She's been in that position. And also, I mean, she was under 19 coach, and as the sporting director Horstel said last week, once they made that call to sack the manager and to get an interim coach in internally rather than externally, who else do you go to apart from the Union don't have an under 23 team, so the under 19 coach is effectively the next one down. So she was the obvious choice. And I think she does fit. Union is it's a smaller club. It's a club with a very, very strong identity. People really like the coaches to understand the club and understand the identity of the club and to kind of chime with the general vibe of the people there, because it's very, very rooted in the local community. And Marie-Louise Eta definitely does that. The way she goes about her business, that kind of what I was saying earlier about her being a straight talker, not mincing her words. That's very in line with Union. She was born in Dresden, which is albeit a different region, but not so far away. And I think a lot of people do identify with her and see her as a very kind of Union-like person generally.
I guess as well, the other thing is having to block out the noise, which must be so frustrating, because the scrutiny is if things don't go well, it's because she's a woman, and they've had to deal obviously with online backlash. Horst Held, the Union Berlin's director of football, said, "I've noticed the sexist comments, but I refuse to give these voices a platform. I find it absurd that we still have to justify this in 2026. Their strategy online has been, especially on Twitter, has been to respond directly to the comments, which I don't know. I kind of like that when you see a club coming out and just kind of directly approaching that kind of rubbish that you see online. What do you make of their strategy of engaging with that?
Yeah, I think club president Dirk Singler said it sort of phrased it on Saturday. He said we've thrown ourselves into the fight in that regard. They've kind of gone out all guns blazing, and yeah, it is good to see them. And there's some people asking, do you have to do it? Do you have to be on a platform like X at all? Are you not giving more oxygen to those voices if you're engaging with them? But I think once you're there, I think it is good to stand up to it and kind of expose it for what it is. And I think part of what Union have done in the last week or so as well is they've reacted to the bad stuff and the negative stuff, but they've also pointed out the good stuff. And the club spokesman Christian Arbeit pointed out last week. He said even in areas of football which are generally a bit more male dominated, a bit more conservative, a bit more backward, we might say, even from those areas, they've had a lot of support, a lot of positive messages. And I think that's been part of it as well, to kind of say, look, yeah, there are these idiots online saying the negative stuff, but there's actually the overwhelming response has been really, really positive and from all corners and all sides as well.
I think as well it probably helps for Eta as well, because she is the focus of this big change, if you like, and breaking through that glass ceiling, and she's under the microscope. So to know that the club, I guess, outwardly has her back, obviously they believe in her, they've appointed her, but to see them kind of, as you say, go to battle a little bit for her must be quite reassuring for her as well. She's not doing this alone, essentially.
Yeah, and I think she's sort of trod the line quite well. I think she's not shied away from how big the story is and how big the appointment is, and she's sort of been very open about how she understands the responsibility and the significance of her role in this whole thing, while also trying to say, look, I'm a football coach and I want to concentrate on the football first and foremost. And I think having the club behind her in that respect is helpful. And I think, to be fair, I think that it's quite clever in some ways if you look at the long term, the way Union have done it. They have a very good coach on their hands. They understand it's going to be a big deal to put her in charge of the men. But, she was put in charge for one game as an assistant coach under Bielitsa. Then she was part of a duo coaching them with Krause when Bielitsa was fired. Now it's the next step as interim, head coach, but interim coach. And who knows, maybe in a year, 2 years, 3 years, we might see her, taking on the role permanently. I don't think anybody would be surprised. And I think in some ways that kind of phasing in has sort of normalised it a little bit more at every step and allowed it to take the pressure out a little bit.
Yeah, what will be the transition period, I suppose, between her going from the men's into the women's again? Do you see a future in her going to the men's again, I suppose, in the long term, like you kind of alluded to?
Yeah, it was interesting. Initially, Union didn't rule out that, if she did well, that maybe she could stay at the men's beyond the summer. And she signed her contract with the women's, I think, 2 weeks before taking over the men's as interim. And they went back on that at the end of last week. And part of the rationale for that Singler, the president, said was, he didn't think he'd be doing women's football any favours to say if she does well, she stays with the men, and if she does badly, she goes back to the women in inverted commas. And I think that reflects on Union's general kind of strategy at the moment. They've They've invested really, really heavily in women's football over the last few years. They're on a hugely ambitious project to basically bring the women's team up to the level of the men's. They're building a training complex at the ground at the moment, which is going to be shared by the men's and women's professional teams. It's not equal pay, but they're paying some of the highest wages in the women's Bundesliga. You know, they really do see themselves as trailblazers, as a club that's trying to raise the bar for other clubs in women's football in Germany. And part of that is having what Singler says is one professional football department with two teams, a men's team and a women's team. And I think Eta and her role at both in the next few years is quite a good example of that. You know, essentially she's a very good coach who is on the books at the club, and they will want to employ her in the roles that you know are best suited to her at any given time. For the moment, that's interim with the men's. Next season, she's going to have a very ambitious project with the women and everything they want to do. And then in the future, who knows? But I think the general strategy at Union is to bring the two sides a little bit closer together and have them working much more as one organisation with sort of two sides, if you like.
Well, regardless of whether she still goes to the women's team or stays with the men's team, more broadly, how do you see this impacting, I guess, more widely on the clubs in Germany? Like, are there other women in positions in clubs in Germany that could potentially, you know, make that step as well? Do you think it's going to impact that mentality?
Yeah, and I think it's certainly it's changed the discussion a little bit. I think even if you look at, you know, the way Vincent Kompany was asked about it and spoke very eloquently about it before the Real Madrid game last week. I think little things like that, just as I say, they kind of step by step lead to a certain amount of normalization. And I think, you know, Etta herself pointed out last week, you know, she's not the first step. You know, talk about Sabrina Wittmann at Ingolstadt and other female coaches before her in German football, but also in French football and elsewhere. And this feels like a milestone, a watershed, but at the same time, it's part of a process that you know will continue, hopefully, you know, going in the same direction in the next few years. I think Union definitely see themselves as a huge part of that process, and a club that is trying to break new grounds, trying to encourage and explicitly saying to other clubs, look, we expect you to come up behind us and to match us and to try and overtake us, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're not just trying to kind of dominate the women's Bundesliga or make a big media storm or, you know, do any of these things in isolation. We're trying to change the entire structure and the entire culture around women in football and women's football in Germany. And I think, you know, it's a funny thing because Union, some people see them as a very progressive club, some people see them as a very conservative club. It depends what issue you're talking about at any given moment. But I think on women's football particularly, there's a very kind of hands-on, sleeves up. Let's just get stuff done. Let's stop talking. Let's not, you know, stop with the platitudes. Let's actually put our money where our mouth is and you know, employ the right people in the right positions and invest properly in women's football. And as I say, I think they really do see themselves as trailblazers in that regard, who hopefully will pull the rest of German football up with them.
It's funny, isn't it? Because, like, obviously we celebrate this big moment, but equally you're like, it's 2026. How are we having to still have these first moments? And, you know, you're also then putting it, not only is she the first woman to be doing this job, as we've touched on, but like she has to then deal with that extra expectation, that extra pressure. You know, it comes with so much more. It just must be so difficult being the one to be that trailblazer, I guess. I
think it's such a huge thing, though, to have created this moment, and then the second person who comes up behind you has someone to kind of, you know, learn from their experience, to kind of, you know, you create a more of a community. Because, like, you know, in the UK, we still haven't seen a woman become a Premier League manager or even a Championship manager. That still hasn't taken place. I mean, we're still struggling with all kinds of representation in the Premier League. But I think that's the thing that I don't think maybe... I mean, when you speak to her, does she sort of appreciate the gravity of what she's achieved, or does she just see actually it's just a, you know, promotion into a role that, you know, she was destined for because she has the credentials and she was the best fit for the job?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I think, you know, she's a clever person. She understands exactly the significance of it, and you know, she spoke a little bit last week at the first press conference also about wanting to be a role model, and that kind of being the counterweight to all the negative stuff on social media. You know, ignore that stuff and focus instead on, you know, understanding that doing what she's doing, she's an inspiration to not just in football but in any walk of life to young girls who can say, okay, if I do excel at something and if I am good at something, then I can, you know, do it to whatever level is possible or is there in my field. And so I think she does absolutely take on that responsibility as a role model and see herself in that regard. But yeah, I think there's always that reining in and saying, look, at the end of the day, I've got a job to do, and that's why I'm here, is because I like being a football coach and I like working with people. That was her opening gambit at the press conference last week, and that's the kind of the bread and butter and always the first priority.
Absolutely love that. No, thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to us about it, because it's been something we've been talking about. The UK has gone absolutely crazy for it. We've been talking about sort of the impact that it's going to have on coaching here, and how many more women and girls are going to want to get involved in coaching programs. We've got there's a great organisation that we have here called the Powerhouse Project, and they're kind of working with all types of organisations to get more coaches in, and they were saying they've seen an uplift in the last year. And the ambition is not just to grow women and girls coaches to go into the women's game, but it's to grow coaches at every single part of the infrastructure. So moments like this really matter. So I really appreciate you giving us a bit of a behind the scenes look at what's been going on with the club and the players and the reaction. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much for having me.
Coming up after this, the Champions League semi-finals are nearly here. All right.
I forgot about them.
European football exists. We could finally get back to talking about it, to be honest.
Got to be interesting, isn't it, for all teams to come back to these massive games after
massive games.
Well, but a break from domestic football.
It's going to be even harder for the players who have been involved in the international fixtures to go from these massive, major tournament qualifying games to then go back into a major tournament, or what kind of a major tournament? Like a semi-major tournament qualifying game, essentially. That there's no rest for the wicked. Do you know what I mean?
But there's also no league game to kind of get your mindset back in with your team.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Where you're kind of like, oh yeah, lads, yeah, you're the person I'm going to be trying to find on the pitch.
Oh, you're on the right. Yeah,
I'm with you now. I've got my club hat back on. It's just bam. One of the biggest games of the season. Boom.
We've got Bayern Munich versus Barcelona on Saturday the 25th. And then we've got Arsenal versus Lyon on Sunday the 26th. It just feels like this is the fixture. This Arsenal versus Lyon, second year in a row that we've seen it. Obviously, Lyon 8-time winners in this competition. The last time they faced each other, Lyon won 2-1 at Meadow Park in the league phase. It kind of feels like it's always a big rivalry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, deja vu, but also a massive, massive rivalry. There's something about Lyon that always scares me.
Puts the frighteners up you.
Yeah, it does. It makes you feel very, very...
Scares the bejesus out of you.
It does. Yeah. Why are you saying it like that? Why are you not fearing this?
I am. They're terrifying.
But then also Arsenal at the same time, you've got your Champions League trophy, you're defending it, but there's a mentality shift, I think, for Arsenal that actually they've done it before.
Yeah, and Arsenal just seem to almost it doesn't matter how they're doing in the league, they seem to really enjoy the latter phases of the Champions League.
Yes.
And what's interesting is, we often say you talk a lot about, the way they play at the Emirates and how much they enjoy playing at the Emirates and how important it is for them. And when they were playing against Chelsea, we'd said if Arsenal want to win this, they have to win the Emirates leg of it. What's really interesting is that when they played Lyon last time, they lost at the Emirates.
Yep. And
then went on to batter Lyon at the Groupama Stadium, which nobody was expecting. So I don't think it's going to be the same kind of showing.
That's a big stake in the sand.
I don't think that's how it's going to go this time round. But yeah, I mean, look, any of those teams would scare the bejesus out of me. But yeah, Lyon are quite frightening.
I feel a bit nervous, but at the same time, I think when you are defending champions, I think there is something, and because it's been so fresh that they actually have the trophy, they have beaten, opposition like Barca, they've already they've slayed a giant not too long ago in the same competition, and I think there's a lot to be said for something like that. Plus, you've got Leah Williamson back, you've got your leader back in the squad, you've got your. I think there's assuredness, I think, that she provides in big moments like this. So I think that will be helpful.
Yeah, I do. We kind of forget that I'm sure Lyon are going to be this is a tough prospect. We're coming up against Arsenal. They beat us in this, situation last season. So they're going to be feeling pressure as well. But looking from a perspective of, in English media who want the English teams to go as far as possible, they're a frightening prospect. Melchi de Mornay is...
Don't.
Again, just there's
Stop
a lot of
name.
Katoto. Should I say that instead?
Is that the Voldemort of women's
is that
football?
better? Johannes. There's so many some young players as well coming through. Yeah, it's quite the stacked squad.
Would you like some stats as well?
Yeah, go on. It'll make me feel worse.
Lyon are unbeaten in Ligue 1 this season. 19 games, scored 68 and conceded just 9.
68 goals in 19 games.
Do you know what I mean? Arsenal haven't had a bad season, but it doesn't comparatively speaking, it's not Lyon's season that they've had.
True.
Yeah, it's gonna be scary. But I do think, obviously, like you said, I do think there's a bit of kind of the mentality around the Arsenal fans at the stadium. I think that is always, like we talk about, they've been the 12th person, kind of like getting behind the squad. Like they know how much these games, they're all going to want to go to the final again. Back-to-back Champions League finals.
Part of me wonders as well, I was just saying beforehand about how all 4 teams will be coming into this off the international break. But then equally, it means that the backroom staff, the coaches, etc., have had this last 3 weeks to purely focus on this game.
Yep.
So from that perspective, you're coming back into club this week. You don't have to think about, arguably league football, right? All you need to think about is this. So maybe that is beneficial for the teams to be able to have all their focus on that. I think we saw kind of almost not 2 Arsenals across the Chelsea game, but they weathered a storm against Chelsea.
Mm-hmm. In the last matchup at Stamford Bridge.
And the first match. The opening 20 minutes, Chelsea hit the bar twice. They were on top.
But I think they grew into that first game. I think they were more aggressive in that first game.
For sure.
In the second game, it was just like, we've just got to see it out.
Yeah.
Just get it done, frustrate the hell out of them.
But it almost like gave Arsenal experience in lots of different things.
Yep.
From weathering a storm against a team who have some quality up front that have frightening pace, to being clinical in front of goal. That's the other thing that they were. To then kind of riding out that second leg where they were trying to score, but equally they knew Chelsea had to score and was going to come out, so they had to weather that a little bit as well. It's just, they're important kind of lessons and battles to overcome ahead of a team like Lyon, because you're going to be absolutely up against it.
I think you're completely right. I think there is a kind of there's an experience I think you gather from going into these 2-leg fixtures, because I think like the team that you face in the first leg, even though it's the same team, isn't necessarily the team that you're going to face in the second leg. Do you know what I mean? Like the mentality shifts depending on where you are, like the aggressiveness, like your tactics might change. What you're going to face in that first leg isn't the same as the second leg, and I saw Arsenal be able to pivot and actually adapt to that really quickly.
Yeah, and then conversely, obviously, Lyon were up against Wolfsburg, and I think probably weren't expecting, and I mean, I know I wasn't, to see Wolfsburg leading after the first leg. So equally, Lyon have gone through some battles to get through this as well, to come back from 1-0 down away from home, to then go home and have a really good showing and scoring 4 goals. Happy to be back home and winning the leg there, which is, compared to what happened last season against Arsenal, is going to give them a huge amount of confidence to be able to take a match back home and essentially, really comfortably beat the opponent. At that stage was Wolfsburg. They won 4-0. They've both, I think, gone through it. It's been a battle, if you like. I'm going to keep saying battle because it feels like a war. That they can both learn from. It just makes the ties really intriguing, because I think everyone's going to think about what happened last season and think like, no bother.
It's definitely not no
and
bother.
I'm just saying, don't be thinking no bother.
What's your score prediction? I won't even say score predictions. No. Who do you think is going to go through?
I think it's really what makes it hard to call is because we've not had any league games in the last 3 weeks. So you can't be like, based on form, such and such are looking really, in front of goal, or they're looking compact. Or it's so hard to kind of judge based on not having seen them for the last few weeks.
Very
to
fair.
Really be able to work it out. Like, obviously, would love to see an English team get through to the final again. But Lyon are a very terrifying prospect. Arsenal can do it. Equally so can Lyon.
It sounds like you're sitting on the fence.
I'm sitting on the fence. Going to get splinters.
For the love of God.
What about you?
Arsenal.
Good one.
Yeah, thank you. That's literally the question that I asked. Yeah. I didn't ask for all the analysis and the.
This is what this podcast is for.
No, I didn't ask for you to sit on the fence and give me yes, but also on the other hand, and also,
it's not for you. It's for our listeners.
Just in case, though.
Yeah.
Definitive. In the other semi-final, Bayern and Barcelona are meeting for the second
Barcelona.
time. What did I just say?
No, but before you ask me who you think's going to win.
Right.
I'm being definitive.
I've been definitive. Oh, Christ. She learns quickly, does this one. The first time Barcelona thrashed Bayern 7-1 on the opening night of the competition. Bayern bounced back and won 6 and drew 1 in their following 7 games. What do we kind of make of this matchup? Because Barca are fierce. Barca, but whilst I think Lyon scare the shit out of me, Barcelona give me nightmares, like long-lasting PTSD type nightmares.
They're another team that are just frighten the shite out of you, like.
Yeah, but like in another way, they're like almost like, what's it, Stranger Things? What's the thing in Stranger Things? The
Demogorg.
Yeah, that
Demogorgon.
That's it. Yeah, that's Barcelona.
I think my concern for Bayern is their defense a little bit, and with against United, especially in the first leg, it was just a bit like, forget it, we'll just score more. It's fine. Defence looked a bit shaky, and I just fear for a slightly shaky defence against Barcelona. I'm a big fan of Pernilla Harder, so I think she's a wonderful football player, and I'm delighted that she's doing so well in this tournament. She's obviously desperately wanted to win they all do, but like for a player like that to not have won the Champions League seems crazy.
Well, she's got 7 goals already.
Yeah, let's hope she's got her shooting boots on.
She does have a history of scoring in the semi-finals. She scored when Wolfsburg against Chelsea in 2017-18, and then for Chelsea against Bayern in 2020-21. So maybe that's a positive, I suppose, to take away in a way. Yeah,
and coming off the back of a fairly successful international tournament, they beat Sweden. So I'm slightly concerned about that back line, but Patry, I'm pretty sure, is not going to make this fixture because she sprained her ankle, didn't she, against England, which is a big loss. And I'm pretty sure Bonmati is still out. So that's not ideal for, if you're going to look for anything, if you're a Bayern Munich player, it'll be that they're missing some key players in their midfield. But they do have Alexi Putellas, obviously, in there.
It helps, I've heard.
I think, what we saw against much of the Spain backline is similar to the Barcelona backline, and actually maybe that's quite beneficial for them to have kind of played together during the international window. So coming back in may not be as, I don't want to say jarring, but you know what I mean? In terms of the players in and around you, you're like, yeah, I know you. So that would be beneficial for that Barcelona backline. But I do think it's a mountain for Bayern. Look, you got to beat the best to be the best, but no one wanted to draw Barcelona, did they?
No, quite frankly. And in a way, like, I'm kind of glad, being more of an Arsenal fan than anyone else that's left in the competition, I'm very glad that this matchup didn't happen early doors. What's quite exciting, I suppose, in a way, is that we might have like a duplicate final, an Arsa.
If you like them both.
Yeah.
Barcelona.
An Barcelona final. It was such a great moment last year. It was like one of the highlights of 2025, obviously, as well as the Euros, but it was just such a beautiful thing to have witnessed in real life. So would I say I'd love to see that matchup again? Yeah, probably.
I'm just looking at their front line.
It is
Claudia
horrible.
Pina, Vicky Lopez, Eva Payor.
Well, the worst thing about that front, they obviously have been very prolific in this tournament. So they're the leading scorers in this competition this season. 32 goals, so 10 more than anybody else.
They scored 12 goals in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, fair.
Insane.
Fair. And they've also conceded the fewest, just 5 goals as well. So, yeah.
Bon chance, Bayern.
Good luck. Good luck to Bayern.
Look, it's a 2-legged semi-final. Be in it in the second leg. Like, that's going to be... that's the tough thing when you're going out against a Barcelona is, yeah, you want to win the tie, but you're not going to win it in the first leg, are you? You can't expose yourself that much in the first leg against Barcelona. You don't want to be, 6-0 down or something in the first leg. You need to give yourself a chance in that second leg. So the way they approach them is going to be really interesting, and it's, bodies on the line for that first leg to keep themselves in it.
I think the interesting one, though, is that you also want to you've got the home advantage for Bayern. So I think if you go into the second game with a deficit and you know that you're going to Barca, that's a very tall mountain to climb.
Yeah. So, and, Bayern fans can be good and noisy in the Allianz. So be in it. First leg, stay in it.
Squeaky bum time.